So, how exciting that I get to share the stage once again with one of my dearest friends and one of the brightest minds in this movement. So let's just bring him up here and get started. So please welcome Dr. Jim Lockard.
Thank you.
So,
Merci beaucoup.
Tell them why you said that.
Because I live in France.
How jealous are we? Except we all know that whatever we're equal to is where we land. We're all equal to Westlake. You're equal to Lyon.
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 Nous
So,
habitons à Lyon.
Isa. So the title of our talk today is 2 for 1. 2 for 1. 2 rocks. 2 big rocks. Standing in an ocean of truth. Actually, that's not a bad idea.
That's good.
Yeah.
Somebody take a note of that.
So today, what I'm really looking to do is cap off to finalize this month of Listen. So just based on what you just heard, were you listening to the lyrics of the song?
Yes.
So what did you think?
It's a fantastic. It was sung so well that I was kind of paying attention to that too. But the whole idea is are we listening to what's within us? Or are we distracted by all the noise around us that can lead us here, there, and everywhere? And how do we find that inner voice and stay true to it?
Yeah, and one of the lyrics is, "There's nothing outside of me, it's time to listen. There's a voice inside of me, it's time to listen." So, just because you haven't been here. So, one of the things I've talked about this month are what I call the 3 T's. Other people have told me what they think the 3 T's mean. I had no idea. But my 3 T's are that we listen to 3 things. We listen to the things out there, we listen to our thoughts about the things out there, and then we listen to the truth. So, but most of the time we get caught up in listening to those things out there they're so loud. So I thought maybe you could talk to us about what do you listen to all the way over there in Lyon? I mean, what things are going on in your world that we need to know about?
Well, I'm still kind of in this world because I'm not good enough in French yet to really immerse myself in what's happening there. There is a 24-hour French news TV channel that's in English, and I try to watch that. But we also try to have the French TV on so we hear the language and things like that. But I'm on social media and I'm paying attention to what's happening here, and it's interesting to watch the response of Europeans to what's going on here. As I've talked to Americans, say, do you tell them you're American? Do you pretend you're Canadian or something like that? And the answer is no. They're not angry at us. They're very concerned. Because I speak, why? And they say because what happens in America affects the whole world. And they wish we would take a better approach to our role as stewards of the world. The idea that leaving the Paris Accord on climate change and things like that is like people are really just scratching their heads. And the interesting thing that's happening there is Europe has decided, we can't count on the U.S. to do this. We're going to step up and do it. So that's been a good effect.
So it's had a positive effect.
Yeah, in that regard. They're saying, okay, and we're going to have to do this ourselves. We can't be so dependent. And I think that's a positive thing, but you can't deny that the biggest player in the room is not necessarily in coherence with the rest of the planet.
But you know what you just said, which I think is important for all of us to hear, even those of you that are not wanting to hear this sort of thing, regardless of what you may see or think about what's going on, there is good coming from it. Even based on what Dr. Jim just said, it's forcing other people to step up. It's forcing the world to step up. If our country at this particular moment in time is falling back, they have to. So there is good. I also understand the challenge many of us are having, but there is good. And that's our philosophy, by the way. That's what we teach. There is good in everything. We have to see the good. Because if we're going to spend, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, how can you experience peace if you're willing to contemplate its opposite? Our job is to contemplate peace, contemplate strength, contemplate prosperity, contemplate all the good that we want to experience. So those things get our attention.
Yeah.
But what about the thoughts about those things?
Well, that's it. Do you get, how do you respond or react to what you see, or what you hear or what you read. If you're online or if you're watching TV, the news is never good on TV or in the paper because they've tried doing good news shows and nobody watches them. It's and I equate it to this. Anyone here drive on the freeway? Okay. I'm going to tell you that I don't have a car in France and I don't need one, but that's another story. When you're driving along, you notice when there's a car wreck or something, the traffic slows down. But did you ever stop your car to admire how well the traffic was flowing in the other lane? No, we don't. When things are going well, we just tend to go with the flow. When something happens that's negative, it gets our attention. So that's kind of the way the news media works. You see some good news, but by and large, it's, this happened, and that shooting happened, and there's a war here, and here's somebody going to jail, and things like that. That's what gets reported, because that's what gets our attention. And really, what they're trying to do, in most cases, is keep us watching until the commercials come on. Mm-hmm. And once you get that, that's okay. That's how it works. So we have to understand that we're not necessarily being told the whole story. We're being told the story part of the story in a way that's going to keep them in commercial viability.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I have some Ernest Holmes quotes here that I do want us to consider. But this idea of what do we focus on? What are we willing to look at? So I have a question to all of you, and it's this: what have you looked at this week? Where have you put your attention this week? What has really gotten your attention and held it? Someone asked me yesterday, they said, you are going to deal with the shootings on Sunday, right? I don't know if you've noticed it, but I rarely come in and deal with tragedies that have gone on in the world. Because frankly, if I did, I would be speaking of tragedies every Sunday. I would be coming in and telling you the latest tragedy, but I leave that to CNN and MSNBC and Fox News. However, all of them, regardless of which ones you watch, and I would gather I know what ones you mostly watch. So, but here's the thing, and you can back me up on this or tell me what you think. So,
I can back you up or tell you what I think.
Or tell you what.
That's interesting.
It's getting hot up here. So, honey, could you catch that? Oh, thank you. So, what happened this week with those shootings was horrific. And I would never, ever want to be one of those parents. Nor would any of us want to be one of those parents or one of those children. I did my spiritual work around it, but my spiritual work was not to gawk at it, find everything I could find out about it, talk to everyone about it, get into conversation about how horrible it all is. That's not spiritual work. That's not the spiritual work. Yet it's necessary, and I trust and know those kids that got on the television and ran and just said, when are you going to fix this? That was brilliant. It was great. But my spiritual work is to know the truth as I'm watching it all. That's what we bring to the world. That's the gift we get to bring with Science of Mind. To know the truth regardless, whoever says no matter what every Sunday, Dusty, that's our job. No matter what, I know the truth. That there is good in this, not in the actions, but there is something here. It's happening for a reason. And that reason will make itself known. That reason will out itself. That reason will move us into a better direction. And if I didn't believe that, I couldn't get up on this stage every Sunday. If I didn't believe that, and if I didn't live that, I couldn't stand on this stage authentically. So you're never going to hear me get into the big discussions and the big complaining discussions about these things. And I would ask maybe you think about that and think about how do you deal with those issues?
Yeah, I think our role in New Thought is to approach the world with spiritual poise, where we have done our work. We've done our spiritual work. We've prayed. We've meditated. We've been in service. We've done all the reading and to increase our awareness. And when something like this happens, we're the ones that can show up in representing a greater truth. And the greater truth is that God is present everywhere, all the time, no exceptions, and that I have done my work in spirit in myself so that I can approach it and not add to the problem. The great, the medical thing is first do no harm. And how even people that are well-meaning that go out and try to do social justice work, if they don't have spiritual poise, they often make it worse. They're marching for peace and they hit you over the head with their sign. Because they get angry, because they're not in a place of being able to see the truth, and they get triggered by the negativity. And we all do this to some extent. We're never going to do it perfectly. But the goal should be to be solidly present whatever is going on, whether it's joyous or tragic or whatever it is, because there's always the potential to rise to something better. These kids and their awakening, they're doing so good that people are saying they must be phony. And I put a thing on Facebook this morning. It was an article from 1957 when Little Rock, Arkansas was desegregating their schools, and there were 6 teenage girls, African-American girls, that were taken to school, and the then right-wing version was to say these are actors from out of state. You see, so history repeats itself until we decide we're not going to pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm. And that decision can be made right here, in your minds. Because how much do you think the world would change if everybody came at every experience from an understanding there's good here? Let me find the good here. Not let me figure this out. Let me fix this. One of the things Ernest Holmes is great about is telling us, you're not going to fix anything. You're going to know the truth. And then it will evolve perfectly. So I have these things that I wanted to read, but I have a better idea, I think. Does anybody have any questions they have today? You've got these 2 masterminds up here in Jim Lockard, and I will say, yes, Pat.
I really appreciate what you put on Facebook, because I feel it's a balance of what you just spoke about, because I feel that when we know there's things that we need to advocate for, we need to do it with a conscious mind, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't advocate for it.
Yeah, and just so the people online.
Yes, hey Matthew, would you make sure somebody has a mic to, or Barbara, would you guys run your mics around? No, let the girls do it. Would you mind, ladies? No, because I think because Barbara's not feeling well today, so girls, she's in the back of the room. Just stand in the back and watch.
We should advocate, but we should advocate consciously. That, we just had our Centers for Spiritual Living conference down in Irvine this past week, and I'm on a committee with Centers for Spiritual Living called Spiritually Motivated Social Engagement Committee. And what we do is we craft statements on issues of the day for the spiritual leader to put out, and he looks at them and edits them and sends them out. And now we're beginning a process of training ministers and spiritual communities that want to be socially engaged to how to do that, ways that you can do that and access the media and get involved. But the underlying theme is, you need to be spiritually and psychologically prepared to do that kind of work, because it's very difficult. It's very challenging. You're going to be dealing with people that are very angry and upset and often misinformed. And it's important that you take your best self into that to model the kind of behaviors that we would like to see expand in the world. So that's part that I think New Thought is shifting from an inward focus and, sitting in a circle facing inward and doing our work to turning around and wanting to engage the world in bigger ways. But it's not just something you can do casually. It's something you have to really be fully committed to.
But Pat, I do want to say this, and this isn't you, but this is what I experience for the most part. When people ask that question, I know that you need to know the truth, but you also have to get out there and do this. Most of the time that's coming from, they're not really hearing what I'm saying. They're not hearing what I'm saying about how important it is to do exactly what Dr. Jim just said. Come from a spiritual perspective and then move your feet. So I just want to be clear about what I'm saying. The work we haven't done, the work that we need to do more of, is to ground ourselves in spiritual truth, to know who we are, so that when we open our mouths to speak our truth, we're not coming from that place of anger, rage, trying to fix it. We're coming from truth. Martin Luther King, that's how he did it. He didn't go at it to try to like pummel everyone into the ground to make sure they saw it his way. He kind of did it in a very loving way. So, yes. Nora?
Have the mic.
Mike's coming right to you. See, you didn't have to go to the gym today.
Hi. I think there is great, great hope with all the students uprising and expressing their dismay at what happened, because they are free to say whatever they want to say.
Yep.
They're not commercially bound by any organization. They don't have a job to lose. They are free to be as rebellious against what's happening. I remember when I was a teenager, you had nothing really to lose by speaking up and organizing and speaking your truth. And so I'm hoping that that movement continues and spreads.
Oh,
and that they can revive our...
It can't help but spread. I remember when Prop 8 was out there, we were talking about gay marriage, and I said to my two kids, I was like, so what do you guys think about gay marriage? And they were like, who cares? They were like, our generation doesn't care. We get it. I mean, everybody should love and marry whoever they want to marry. We don't care. So my thought is, I'm just like, I just want them to grow up, get older so they're running the world. Because I do believe the next generation is going to run it. I don't want to say better, but better. Because we're also going to have a lot more women in power. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes. Oh, really? This is why I wanted two of you. So that
Closer, we could have.
Okay, hold on. Do this one right here first.
Now run back that way.
Would you go give one of that? Yeah. Nancy.
Good morning, Susan.
Susan.
That's okay. So I've been studying the science of mind, and this week the teachings, and when I'm learning about what Ernest Holmes says, yes, God is all there is, love is all there is. So I need you to help me here, because what's difficult for me to grasp as a human being is, even though love is all there is, when the bad things happen in the world, understanding that people have free will. It's like God has given us free will to make the choices that we make.
Mm-hmm.
So, but this is a tough one for me,
Yeah.
you know, to see what's going on, but to remain firm in that God is all there is, and love is, you know, to be able to see that in that child who came in and shot people up. This is
No,
hard.
I get it.
So could you address that? Because
He's gonna
I don't
start.
get this, you know?
Yeah.
I have the answer, but I want to see if his is the run I have. Just to be clear.
There's a wonderful little book called Handbook to Higher Consciousness by Ken Kesey that's been around for decades. And one of the things he says in there, I think, speaks to this. He says, all human behavior is an expression of love. Some of it's skillful, and some of it's unskillful. Mm. And what happens is, when we are so complex, you know, most animals that are on the planet, they can only be what they're being. We have a very complex mind, and that potential gives us the opportunity to screw up a whole lot more than a more simplistic kind of a thinking system would do. So we can deviate from our inner truth. We can fail to listen to it. We can be enculturated out of following that inner knowing and cultivating it and so forth. And we're able to then create and sow confusion and discord. And we do. And the good news is that we also have the capacity to grow out of that and grow through it and learn from it. And I think we'd all like that process to occur more quickly. Yeah. And we'd also like other people to do most of the heavy lifting. You know, because that's kind of human nature. I'll be happy when the world straightens itself out, because I'm certainly not the problem, right? That's kind of how we often approach things. And another thing Ernest Holmes says is, it's always about you. It's always about me. My experience of life is based upon my interpretation of what's going on, and there are always multiple interpretations that are possible. Am I seeing the world in the best light? Am I contributing a consciousness to the overall consciousness that is supportive and loving and compassionate? Or am I sitting back and saying, look at what they're doing over there, and look how bad they are, and complaining? You know, it's all love, and I think the skillful, unskillful piece is very important. We know this kid that did the shooting was incredibly disturbed, that's the society, our institutions failed to, not only to respond to the negative comments, but to be there and be supportive from day one. We wait till someone is so far gone and then we complain, well, they should be locked up. What about, an approach that says maybe we need to be more supportive of the family unit and people that are dealing with children that have very difficult, issues, whether they be medical or psychological or whatever, and we just, and we make it very easy to buy implements of mass destruction. The kid couldn't get Sudafed, but he could get an AR-15. So there's no simplistic answer, but there's a whole multitude of things that could be done to improve the situation to make it much less likely that this kind of thing would happen in the future.
So everything he just said, yes. And although I do like it when I hear you say things like lock up, because it reminds me that you were a cop. It sounds like your cop guy talking. It's really cool. Anyway, Susan, so everything he says is correct, but there's a fundamental thing that I want to clear up, and this is a biggie for all of us as Science of Mind students. Ernest Holmes in 1927 wrote a book. In 1960, he wrote what's called the Seminar Lectures. And if you look at the disparity between 1927 and 1960, or the growth, the growth of this man, where he got to, some of us are still quoting 1927 as though that's the truth and nothing else is. But he got to the end of his life with very smart understandings of what this world is. So I want to clear up one thing. When we say it's all love, we're thinking of love as something that it's not. Love is not bows and froze and, love and, la la land. Love isn't this lovely energy that we all feel for one another. It is, that's part of it. But the only thing love is a creative energy. That's what love is. Love is a creative energy, a creative life force. That thing in me that is creative and emergent and evolving, infinite in scope, that's what love is. A creative energy that gives us the opportunity to decide what we want to do with it. That boy decided to do what he did, using the exact same energy. So it is all love. The level we choose to live love at is why we're all in this room today. Because we've chosen to make this center, this place on a Sunday morning, a place where we go to take our love vibration to a high level. And I'd like to know, then spend the week living at that level. And the more of us that do that, and then interact with everybody in the world, the vibration of love will just keep rising, rising, rising. So when people say to me, which they do all the time in class, all right, if it's all love, explain Hitler. If I had $1 for every time I've explained Hitler in my last 15 years of ministry, or 20 years, whatever it's been, but that's the answer. And it is now a simple answer. Here's what we understand love to be. This is what we understand God to be. When I say I am God, I'm not saying I have suddenly grown a beard and jumped up into the sky to govern you all. Be lovely, since I can't grow a beard. But when I say I am God, I mean everything about me is this creative energy, and I get to use it in the highest and best way I can imagine. So it is all love, and it is all God. And now we're about the business of helping people use it better. I said last week, our job in religious science, to be a religious science minister, my job is to give you the tools, to give myself the tools to raise my vibration as high as I can raise it, as often as I can raise it. We're at the paradigm shift. It's going to shift. And I do believe the next generation, even though that was a young man, I believe the next generation will take us in a different direction. And that what we're talking about here today, they're going to be walking around going, well, of course we're God. Who else would we be? It's not going to take long classes and years of study to finally get it that we're God. They'll know it. They will look back on us as Stone Age people, not stoners, although some of you may fit that one. But they will look back on us and think to themselves and go, wow, do you know those people still thought that they were these limited human beings, and they still prayed to this something in the sky and thought they were worms of the dust? My God, imagine living in that world. Well, it is the world we live in, but it doesn't have to be.
It might be helpful if we had different words for the same, how we describe love.
Thank you.
You know? But if you think of it as a creative life energy that that makes everything run, you know, and we can use it just like you can use electricity to light the stage or to fire the electric chair. You know, it's a similar kind of a concept.
Or to light
And
my
the other thing is
fireball.
I didn't know there was coffee.
That's not coffee. That's not coffee. Wouldn't that be funny if on Sundays I was up here having a mimosa? But I put in a coffee bowl so nobody...
It would explain a lot, too.
Okay. We have to stop. No, sorry, Wada. Ask me a question offline. But I do want to read this for us to conclude. Ernest Holmes said this: when you want to do a big thing, get the mental pattern, make it perfect, know just what it means to you, enlarge your thought. Love this part. Keep it to yourself. How many of you tell everybody what your plans are? Don't. Keep it to yourself. Pass it over to the creative power behind all things. Wait and listen. And then, when the impression comes, follow it with assurance. Don't talk to anyone about it. Never listen to negative talk or pay attention to it, and you will succeed where all others fail. Thoughts?
Yeah, I've always said when you're focusing on something, don't tell anyone unless they're essential to the outcome of the plan. And for most of our personal stuff, that there isn't anyone. You know, you're working on something, you're working on a personal change, and that's a very private thing. And what we often do is we tell other people so we'll feel like we have to do it.
Or we'll tell other people because that's our doing it.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it anymore. We've just lived in the shadow of it. Now we don't have to do it. It's like my Oscar speech that I give frequently in front of the mirror. I've stopped doing that because I actually want to give one someday. Yeah. So I'm not going to just keep doing it and then fulfilling that desire. I'm going to let that desire fulfill itself at the Kodak Theater someday.
And we don't want it to be a have-to. We want it to be a growing expectation.
Yes.
So we do the work over and over. We treat over and over to grow our ability to create that expectation within us. And once we've accepted that expectation, it has to manifest. That's just the way the universe works. So sometimes by telling other people, we actually diffuse the energy that we're creating within. Because we're either seeking validation or we're trying to get approval or something like that, and that's a dissipative energy. So it's really about, if you want to live the life of your dreams, A, have big dreams, and B, focus on moving into them, knowing that that's what you're here to do.
I will tell you, though, you can always tell me. You know why? Ursula knows why. She's shaking her head yes. You can always tell me because I'm only ever going to know your highest and best. So when you know you have someone like that, use that person. Tell them the truth. When you tell them what you're thinking, they'll tell you the truth. So you want to give us one last overall thing for us to take out of here about listening? I know that's putting you on the spot, but it has to be really important, really deep.
Okay. I think that discernment, the term discernment means to look at the sea of information that's out there and be able to identify what's of value, what's real, is the most important skill of the 21st century. Mm-hmm. Because so often, I've been led into posting stuff online that isn't real because I didn't take 5 minutes to go look it up or, find a reliable source to look it up. And I think the ability to discern and say, you know what, that just doesn't feel right. I'm going to take a look at it. I'm going to see if this is really true. And I think that's so critical because otherwise, we just get triggered and we get triggered and we get triggered. And when we're triggered, we're neither discerning nor creative. You don't get creative in a crisis. You can do something valuable in a crisis when you bring into the crisis preparation. Mm-hmm. So it's important that we be prepared, that we be prayed up, that we be doing our work so that when the inevitable difficulties of life show up, we have something to do. And that's all about listening inside, learning to listen to that inner voice that's wise.
So if you go back to Dell's song,
Yeah.
there's something inside, and it's time to listen. So that's how we leave our month. It is time. It's been a month's theme, but it needs to be a lifelong commitment to listen to what's inside. So can we give it up for Dr. Jim?
Oh. Thank you. Merci.